Let's begin with the senior most, but the youngest at heart, Mr. Vanchu. It's a very crucial question we are discussing, how to deal with rising costs and room rates which seem to be going down or are stagnant, which means they're going down. So each of these hotels have very different uh, ways of functioning. So Mr. Vanchu, let's begin with you and of course the iconic Imperial.
I think the Imperial itself is a fantastic brand. I've been associated with the hotel for about 6.5 years now, and for 3.5 years earlier on my first tenure. And if I look at the hotel, what it was in 99, 96, today it's totally different. The hotel has been refurbished completely, and it has come to a positioning, I think, which is forced to reckon with. So the biggest challenge that we face today at the Imperial is to live up to our expectations of the customer, because we have set a bar. You know, we have set such a high bar for ourselves that every time we have to do better than the first time. And that is the biggest challenge for the hotel. We have to maintain our customers. The interesting aspects of this hotel is that we have a huge base of repeat clientele. At least, I sign welcome letters for all the VIPs and special attention guests, and 50% of them are repeat guests. So I know exactly that every day, if there are 20 arrivals of repeat guests, the VIP status, at least 50% are repeat. So I think that's the biggest, one of the biggest plus points of the Imperial.
Your room rate is also a big plus point.
Well, that's the challenge, like you just said, that if the room rate is static and the RevPAR and ARRs are static, then it is not a growth. It is a degrowth in a way. We have really not grown too much. We have tried to lead the market. In season, it's always a battle between our competition set that Imperial also always leads in the season. This is 6 months, like Ratan said, this is the time we look forward to our 65% of the revenue. But it's a myth today, because you really end up really not doing that much. So it is a season and off-season story for the Imperial. We have struggled in June, July. Definitely, that's a story we are trying to tackle with the help of the various online booking agencies.
Let's go over to Lemon Tree and Nikhil. Now, you are specializing in different area of India, but you're obviously from here. But tell me, how are you dealing with the issue of rising costs and room rates, which you have the most economic room rate on the forum?
Well, yeah, the other players are all luxury players. So in the space that we operate,
You have guests who use luxury hotels who live in your hotel.
so about our database shows that 90+% of our consumers are actually 5-star users, 5-star and 5-star luxury users. So it's not that, they aren't, they're making a conscious choice of staying in a mid-market to upscale hotels across the country. With us, RevPARs are not an issue across the country, and we were relatively surprised this year. Jaipur, we did occupancies which were about 18% higher than even last year, and that's not how the market spanned out. So from ADR perspectives, we could do better, but like Ratan said earlier, they are leaders here in the luxury market. If they take their ADRs higher, our ADRs could be much higher.
Vishwapreet, your hotel has very unique challenges. First, just after the refurbishment, you had the bridge come. Now you have a burgeoning AeroCity. And you guys had a lot of airline customers, I remember. And you still are holding on to them, as you said. But what are the challenges which are unique to your property, and what are you doing about it?
Like you rightly said, we went into a huge renovation process. Renovation lasted for about 4 or 5 years. A lot of money was spent, and so obviously, as a general manager, my role now has changed a bit in terms of just being a general manager and running operations, but also looking at what is the EBITDA or what is the PBT at the end of the day. Because there is monies to be paid back, there is interest and loans to be paid back. So keeping that in mind, our first challenge was to understand what is across the road. Because that's imminent, that's happening, that's true today. After that, breaking down what our market segments are. What were strengths before? What is it today? and what we need to capture for tomorrow. So along with the entire sales team, revenue management team, DOSM and everybody, we defined that. We defined that about 14, 16 months back. Because what you do that time starts to yield today. It's not like if you change marketing policies or market segment targeting, it'll start to yield immediately. So having said that, we were well aware of what's coming, and we had a comfortable ride this summer. We've had good occupancy percentages vis-a-vis last year.
Let me ask this one question which Ratan had come up with. What are the rates you've announced for the season to come? All of you. Come on.
You'll see that 1st of October.
Today is 1st of October.
Today is 1st of
So what
October.
are the rates? You of course, Ritesh, you said you guys have announced it in September, right? So what is the rate that you've announced?
We have two hotels, Trident and the Oberoi together, and we run more like a complex. So I'll talk on behalf of both the two hotels. We run a very strong inventory game, and we've learned it from the airlines many, many years ago, but I think we've learned it much better than them right now. So it's not only about maximizing inventory per single day. And like Mr. Vanchu was saying, both our hotels, we're extremely lucky that our repeat client base is as high as 42%. So which means you just have to get the remaining 58% part of the business. It's a tough fight. It's not easy. Every day, I think I'll call myself a 40% sales guy, and I'm out in the market and meeting guests and customers and purchase managers, because they kind of end up taking most of the calls nowadays in terms of signing RFPs. So it is tough, but you have to stand your ground. You know, let me give you some comparisons. In our best year across, let's say, Delhi and Mumbai, the maximum price that one hotel can get, let's say, in New Delhi is about 15,000 average rate. Bombay is about 16.5. In dollar terms, you're talking about $210. So I did a study. Our main source markets are, let's say, US 51%, another 20% is from the UK, etc. Top hotel rates of very average hotels in the US and the UK are upwards of $250. And at the end of it, our entire summer, we have relegated ourselves, and we ourselves are to blame, relegated ourselves to $140 business, or less than 100 pounds today. So at 100 pounds, you want free internet, you want free breakfast, you want free
Don't give free
transfers.
internet.
No, I'm saying this is the wish list of what people
Who
want
gives
to
free
have.
internet over here? Okay, the two
So
of them
talking
give
about free internet, free breakfast, please throw in an airport transfer. Let's have a
24/7.
great fruit basket.
24/7.
24/7.
Arrival experience in the room. At the end of it, costs do matter. Like you rightly said, in terms of the business, first 6 months for us, if I were to look back, we had a great 6 months. I mean, average rate is not part of the game in the first 6 months, only about RevPAR which goes to the bank. So, of course, we've grown about 5% over last year. And I look at my comp set very carefully, and they haven't done very badly either. It's about minus 1% or minus 2.5%, or a great hotel is actually done about 4.5% better than last year. Yes, rates have taken a beating, and I think it's very important to hold on to your rates. We tend to panic a lot. Also in the game, it's important, you know, at the end of it, it's about making GOP, which that's what goes to the owner and goes to the management company, goes to the bank. There's several avenues to look at. Rooms is, of course, a major change, but in the last 3 years alone for our two hotels, you know, food and beverage revenue to rooms revenue has grown from 45% to 55%, almost touching 60 now.
So, because you park your cars at the Oberoi
Of
and
course, you see,
you have a little wedding venue which used to be,
You
well,
have to think out of the box. It is the time of Mr. Vanchu had a great example he was sharing in the afternoon, and I'll leave it.
Mr. Vanchu's, the whole way that they've expanded.
The business center idea is fantastic, and it's all about.
What are these ideas which make hotels more profitable without you having to deal only with room rates?
Vikram, it's not about. It's about, I think, looking back at the way you do business. You know, competition always increases, and in many ways it's nice to have competition because it tends to push you to think out of the box. Everybody's got opportunities, everybody's got areas, you have to learn them, they have to follow in the brand guideline, they have to follow in the terms of the overall experience you want to give to your guests. Limousines, for example, I mean, my car business, interestingly, last 6 months, we just closed September, has grown by 45% because there seems to have, so we actually invested in cars as a small hotel, 136 rooms. We have a fleet of about 10 cars. And that has grown by itself because Agra trips are going on, because ever since the expressway increased, we are selling guests to Agra pretty much every day, and each trip is a lot of money. And people experience the cost because you have to stop thinking. I mean, if you look at our hotels on the global arena with the dollar to a 64, let's start comparing rates there. And when you start giving that logic to a guest, 70% people buy the logic. So there's no need to panic and drop rates. Just hold on to what you, like Mr. Keswani mentioned earlier, there has to be a last draw line. And we stick to the draw line very, very carefully.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to what he's saying. The business of running hotels is changing. We, at one point in time, only used to look at RevPAR because that goes to the bank, like what Nitish said. But now, aspects are changing a bit. We are now looking at revenue per available guest. Everybody who walks into the hotel is a potential guest who's going to spend either in your rooms, or at your spa, or at your F&B, or banquets, or whatever it may be, because there's a cost of running the hotel. So that is one aspect. The other aspect is, instead of saying RevPAR, have a look at RevPOR, which primarily means revenue per occupied room, whereby you look at the total revenue, not just the rooms, but what the person is spending in the F&B as well, in the spa as well. So two aspects. One, people coming in. The other one, people spending within the hotel. Even if, for example, if it's a double occupancy, what is the second occupant spending? Are we extracting that from that particular guest? He's staying with you, right? He is utilizing your services. So are we making money or no? We are not making money. So yes, I agree that we should hold on to rates. However, we should also look at what are we generating in terms of revenues per available guest in the hotel. Otherwise, we are not business managers. We are just general managers.
Nikhil, your hotel model has less wriggle room, so how do you expand or make it a more interesting kind of structure in getting money?
So Bikram, it's also the model. So we have less staffing numbers to start with, right? So a typical luxury hotel here would have 2 to 3 employees per hotel. We are at 0.7 per room, right? Sorry, per room.
3 employees per hotel, fantastic.
Per room, right? So that's the first thing that you need to get right. You multi-skill them to a great degree, which actually leads to what we are seeing, a 40% plus GOP, a 40% plus guest satisfaction in terms of guest return ratio is all in the 40s. So that's how we look at it. How do you look at cost differently? You have to be innovative there, right? So in 2007, we took a step in hiring people with disabilities. Now, this was not a CSR activity. It was an alternate pool for us, and we said if we can make this work, we will take this front of the house in housekeeping, in F&B service, and other functions. And I'm happy to say that today, we don't only have people who are hearing impaired, we have employees in our F&B who have Down syndrome and who are autistic. We've got about 400 such employees today.
Mr. Vanchu, let's start another round of questions with you. What about saving? How do you save money with so much of the expenses going up? How does Imperial do it?
Well, it's always a challenge to reduce your costs
Because the guest is more and more demanding.
yes, there are a lot of inclusions that every hotel is now adding on, and breakfast is one of them, which I think the CP we were talking about, the CP, the Cornell plan, which has now become a given, right? In the old days, we were charging for breakfast separately. Anyway, that's one aspect. The costs are increasing day by day. SWB, the salary and wages, I think that's one of the biggest expense which any hotel faces, and you always talk about 20% of the total revenue or 18%. In the olden days, it was 16%. Now, we are a luxury hotel. We cannot cut down on certain services. So our cost of SWB is pretty high. Of course, if the revenue goes up, the percentage drops. So I think we have a challenge here. We definitely have a larger number of employees per room than what you have. I cannot even think how 0.7 works. But in
And Imperial you have to walk a lot from one room to the other.
But I'll tell you, every customer who checks in is not checked in by a bellboy. A standard is that every customer is checked in by an assistant manager. Now that is one big challenge, because he has to walk the guest to the room and ensure that everything is explained to the customer about the hotel, if he's especially a first timer. And at the door, we have door girls, we have doormen all over. So there is a bit of luxury as far as manning is concerned. So how do we cut down this cost of manning? Multi-skilling to an extent in a hotel like ours works, but only to an extent. Because multi-skilling to us means that we have to, say, sometimes get F&B guys to come and help in front office, etc. It doesn't work really. Practically, it doesn't work. So I think that's a big challenge. HLP is one area where we really have tried to cut down. And a few examples, for instance, we have the solar heating for our water in the rooms. Our entire water is heated with solar power. So we are not spending any electricity at least 10 months of the year. We have just installed 2 years ago a chapati maker in the cafeteria, which is basically run only on natural gas and a bit of electricity. Earlier it was we were running tandoors. We were using about 200 kilos of coal a day. So that is cut down. So such initiatives have to be taken, which are also mandatory as far as the government is concerned. We talked about sewage treatment plants, which also help us in reducing costs. We convert our wet garbage into manure. We have a wet garbage converter. So all these things do end up at the end of the day in reducing our costs.
You've already talked about, and what about how do you save?
For an operating property, we first need to look at two aspects of one is variable costs and one is fixed costs. Like what Mr. Marshall was talking about, HLP and salaries generally come under fixed costs. So the first aspect that we do is on a monthly basis we have our financial review meetings, where every department head, who also is a business manager of his or her own department, comes up with what the MIS states as to what the expenses have been vis-a-vis budget, vis-a-vis last year, and vis-a-vis last month. So you do a projection on that. Post that, we also look at per cover cost, per room cost, per square feet cost. So we break it down to that many tangibles. We also look at revenue generation per FTE, fixed term employment or employee, to understand what is the revenue contribution for the individual and what is the cost on the individual as well. So once we've deciphered all that and we've seen, okay, what are the variable costs, where is it that our brand standards are, what is the guest expectations? So guest expectations are phenomenal. We can derive inferences from influencers like TripAdvisor and things like that, or guest Medallia feedbacks. Once we have all that and what our brand standards are, we need to make sure that there's a bridge between that. It's to deliver too much for a guest who's paying 6,000 rupees, 7,000 rupees, 8,000 rupees, and the same deliverance goes to a guest who's paying 20,000 rupees, 25, or even 65,000 rupees staying in our suites. We have to define what value goes to which particular room category. And hence, there has to be a parity of sorts. So all that comes into play when we do our financial review meetings. And the outcomes are then implemented. And hence we have been able to bring down our costs quite drastically for the past 2 years.
Vikram, we look at costs slightly differently. It's not about cutting costs. And as our executive chairman, Mr. Oberoi, keeps saying and advising us, it's about cutting waste. In our business of being in the top luxury market, in fact, this year I was just thinking about when you asked the question, we're actually spending about close to a big chunk of money, about 1.5 CR on a customer, on a guest experience enhancement process. Yes, the market is tight. Yes, the GOP is under pressure. Yes, the R&M has gone up. In fact, this year alone, our salary and wages increased by close to 12%, because we strongly feel that
It's time to apply for a job.
please, the interview is very tough though. Let me just tell you, it's not easy.
12% hike.
Because the team members are our biggest strength. They are the ones who drive all the business, and it's important that we pay them what we actually outpriced ourselves, but it's important that they are recognized for what they do, and they make all the difference in our jobs, and that's what lets us get the premium. But coming back to cost, it's not about cutting it. I mean, that's not the right way to look at it for us. It's about rationalizing it. It's about having your feet on the ground. It's about listening to what's going around. So I'll give you a small example. We have a lot of gold leafing work which happens across the hotel, and we have a vendor who's been working with us for ages. We just discovered Asian Paints, and it's like a small ad for them. They're providing the same quality of work at half the price. So in a small patch across the hotel, about 1,000 square feet, we saved about 3 lakhs. So it's about the same quality at the right price. In today's time and age, there's so much available. You have to look at the way you do purchase. It's not about picking up the phone and speaking to your same 15 vendors, but go on the internet, go on Snapdeal. I find a lot of good items on Snapdeal, on OLX, a lot of items you get which you can get a good price comparison to. So it's not about cutting waste, cutting costs at all. Food and beverage supplies, for example, have gone up an average 14%. Recently in the state of Haryana, our taxation went absolutely through the roof. They've implied 1,000 rupee cost per bottle as part of excise fee. Does it mean that guests stop drinking? They really don't. It's about enhancing the experience. It's about appreciating that if somebody's spending close to $200 with you for a night, how do I make that experience worth $450? How do I enhance my service standard? So we are not looking at cutting costs really, but enhancing ourselves all the way.
I think there's a lot of hint for us to conclude. So in conclusion, is there anything you guys want to say, or shall I throw it open to questions? Mr. Vanchu.
I'd like to just say that Imperial is a standalone, whereas all the hotels, you're all part of chains, right? So I think there's a big difference there, and running a single hotel is always a challenge to maintain the prices as well as the positioning in the hotel. So I think in the city. So the challenges definitely are there to fight the war right now. There's so many rooms coming up in the city, and the biggest challenge I have is to retain the customer who I have with me. I do not want that customer to go away. That's one big challenge. And the other challenge is, of course, to try and add on new accounts. That's one of the targets I've given to my team. Every month I check which are the new accounts you've added. Maybe they're from competition. Maybe, it happens, right? Sometimes you may take some of my accounts. It works like that. But we try to keep our all in good faith. So I think we can discuss it over a cup of chai later. Thank you.
Questions?
So my question is to Vishwapreet. I think you'd mentioned this concept of understanding what the value of a guest is, right? It's something that I think should have come a long time ago. I'll give you my own very personal example, and I often wonder why this thing, and this is a question to all of you, because I think you guys really should think about this. So I travel to London at least twice a month. I have a lot of customers in London since I happen to be in the tech business for hotels, so it's very easy for me to call up and say, get me a room, and I'll may or may not get a preferential rate. In fact, the irony is sometimes they tell me to book through Platinum or Centurion, so I get the benefits, right? Because there's no way they can give me that rate, and then they'll give me all the upgrades and the freebies, right? What nobody recognizes is, first of all, that there is no measure of this concept that you're talking about. Nobody measures what the value of my stay really is to the hotel when they take into account not just the room revenue, my F&B revenue. I'm having business meetings in the hotel. I may invite somebody for dinner. I may use a trainer in the gym. Nobody takes that, right? So my spend is probably 2x of my room spend per day. Nobody measures that. And it's just a question open to all of you, which is, what are you doing about it? Because honestly, if that's my spend, and you're paying 30% to Booking.com or 25% to Amex or something, and that's ridiculous, right? I mean, there's enough margin in there to make a customized offer for frequent guests, and Mr. Vanchu, you talked about your frequent guests, right? Why is it you're not going directly to these guests? Why is it that a person X who stays at your hotel regularly does not get a customized offer or ability to have a customized offer which is based on his or her spending in your hotel, which is gross spending, because the color of the money is the same, doesn't matter which department they spend it in. And secondly, I think there's another metric which in the age of social media is very relevant, is their power and sphere of influence, right? Nobody measures that. If I say that I'm staying at Rosewood London as an example, right? I can tell you that that hotel has probably got 25 people who started staying there regularly as a result of my staying there, right? So just, I think both a thought and a question to all of you, which is, what are you doing about this? Are you thinking about it? Because I think it's a very big latent opportunity, especially in luxury, right? Not in the limited service segment, but certainly in luxury.
I think you're talking about recognizing a customer, and rewarding him for what he's spending. We have, like I said, a lot of repeat customers, and so if a customer has had about 20 visits or 40 visits or 50 visits, we track that. And for every, like 40 or 50 visits, we have a certain, incentive for the guest. And be it gifts, be it, certain, maybe even a couple of room nights free we offer. And I get a direct, a lot of inquiries directly to myself, the guest write to me directly. We also try and convert a lot of these OTA bookings into direct bookings. Thereby, it helps us and helps the customer also. So I think point is valid. We need to look into this. We need to recognize the loyal customers, who are spending so much money by adding, a few inclusions in whatever, we can offer without spending too much money. And I think Wi-Fi is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing today in the industry. So I think the point is valid and definitely it's thought-provoking.
So Nikhil, to further answer that, we at the Oberoi Group about 2 years back realized the same. And now using Opera, which is our property management system, we figured out a way that every general manager, when you read your arrival reports for the next day, there's a little field which comes next to it that Mr. Nath has stayed across Wildflower Hall or the Oberoi Mumbai, and therefore little extras happen. And of course, you're right, cost of getting a new guest vis-a-vis retaining somebody is much more different. We understand the importance of lifetime value of a guest, and so it's happening. It's all happening across various small users, but for a chain, it's much more important. We also started a referral program couple of years back, 2 years back, and that alone has been a huge learning for us. I mean, first year alone, we got additional close to 25,000 room nights just by the power of referrals. So I completely understand you filling up Rosewood Hotel. I mean, we got some hotels in India too, so refer your friends to us.
Hi, I'm Sanchit. A question to all of you. Yes, presence of an OTA actually reduces the ARR, and if the ARR of a hotel is still the same, yeah, it's not growing. So what do you think, what should an OTA do to increase the ARR of your rooms? Because when we talk about OTAs, we talk about competition, and competition reduces the ARR. So what do you have to say about that? What should an OTA do to increase the ARR of your rooms, which they're not doing currently?
To answer, to your question, we like OTAs. They're good friends of ours. In fact, they've helped us reach places where we really couldn't have reached earlier. But to sell better, sell at the bar, or sell at the best available rate, of course, the commission is something which we all speak to you about and negotiate and discuss, because I understand you have huge cost to run. But it all actually depends on the hotel, on the revenue manager of the hotel to decide your rate. So it's not really in your hands, but really in ours to tell you what rate to sell it at. So that's one key difference we must understand. It's not really in your hands, but in ours.
Oh, see, just to add to what he's saying, OTAs take the bar rate only. It's not like they have a special rate or that they present it. OTA is a platform where you get comparisons of all hotels. So when you are searching for a particular city or even a specific region in a city, and you want to go and stay there, you will have parity. You'll have a huge rate card. It's like a menu that you get. OTAs definitely help in expanding horizons for companies. At Carlson Hotel, we already are 1,300 hotels worldwide. So we try to attract guests directly to our websites rather than going through OTAs. OTAs do contribute. It's not like that we don't want to work with them. We do. We work with them very extensively. But we still want guests to come to our websites because, yes, there is a percentage of commission that we pay to OTAs. So we don't want that to go out. It's cost of doing business actually with OTAs.